Romeo and Juliet, Macbeth, Hamlet, The Tempest, A Midsummer's Night Dream. All are illustrious plays, and all were written by the GOAT, William Shakespeare. Everyone knows Shakespeare. Why? Maybe because he is part of every high school curriculum. Maybe because he is the best-selling fiction author ever. Regardless, Shakespeare stands as arguably the greatest poet and playwright of all time. Hey guys, National Info here. This analysis of Shakespeare's Sonnet 30, or When to the Sessions of Sweet Silent Thought, is going to take you through the history of Shakespeare, and the sonnet in general as a form of poetry. We will also delve into the deeper meaning of each line, and what Shakespeare was really trying to tell us. Let's get started with some background. William Shakespeare lived a very long time ago, and therefore his life is not completely documented. From what we know, he was born around April 23rd in 1564 in Stratford-upon-Avon, England. His parents were John and Mary Shakespeare. John was a leather worker, but through marrying Mary Arden, whose family was important, he became the town bailiff. Being a bailiff is similar to being the mayor of a town, meaning John was known by the public. But for some unbeknownst reason, he later stepped down from being in the public eye. But because his father was in the public eye, Shakespeare most likely attended Stratford Grammar School, learning writing and Latin classics until the age of 15. William had 3 younger brothers, Gilbert, Richard, and Edmund, and 4 younger sisters, 2 of which died at birth, Anne, who died at 7, and Joan. At the ripe age of 18, William married Anne Hathaway, who was 26 at the time, and they had their first daughter, Susanna. Soon after, they had twins, Judith and Hamnet. Hamnet was Shakespeare's only son, who died when he was 11 years old. Later on, Shakespeare started working in the theater business in London and eventually moved there, while Anne and the children lived back home in Stratford. This sort of separation could have been signs of a difficult marriage, but we don't know for sure. His eldest daughter, Susanna, ended up married to a doctor, John Hall, with whom she had Shakespeare's first grandchild, Elizabeth. Shakespeare's other daughter, Judith, married Thomas Quiney, who was a vintner, or wine merchant. There are currently no direct descendants of Shakespeare, because his bloodline died out. Shakespeare had many roles in the London theatre, as an actor, playwright, and business partner in an important acting company, the Lord Chamberlain's Men, which was later called the King's Men. He died on April 23rd, 1616, from an unknown cause, but his brother-in-law died a week earlier, which could mean it was some sort of infectious disease that took longer to kill Shakespeare. Now that you know that brief background on the great William Shakespeare, let's talk about the sonnet as a form of poetry. First of all, the word sonnet comes from the Italian sonetto, meaning little sound or little song, which makes sense given that a sonnet is a 14-line poem. There are 3 types of sonnets: the Petrarchan or Italian sonnet, the English or Shakespearean sonnet, and the Spenserian sonnet, all of which have different formats and rhyme schemes. Sonnet 30 is obviously a Shakespearean sonnet because it was written by Shakespeare. A Shakespearean sonnet has a rhyme scheme of AB, AB, CD, CD, EF, EF, GG, which is the exact rhyme scheme of Sonnet 30. Shakespearean sonnets are also usually written in iambic pentameter. Sonnet 30 is indeed an iambic pentameter. Iambic pentameter is a line of poetry made of 5 feet, and each foot has a short or unstressed syllable, and then a long or stressed syllable. So in total, there are 10 syllables in the line. The format of a Shakespearean sonnet, as shown by the rhyme scheme, is 3 quatrains, or 4-line groups, and 1 couplet, or 2-line group, which is called the final couplet, and it is the lines that stand out. One of the major differences between this type of sonnet and the others is that the final couplet is usually the volta, or turn. In the other types of sonnets, the volta is the 9th line, which would be between the octave and the sestet, 8 and 6-line groups respectively. A volta is where the theme or ideas of the poem change, or a question is answered. Now, since you know all about the sonnet, let's hear Shakespeare's Sonnet 30.
to the sessions of sweet silent thought, I summon up remembrance of things past. I sigh the lack of many a thing I sought, and with old woes new wail my dear time's waste. Then can I drown an eye unused to flow, for precious friends hid in death's dateless night, and weep afresh love's long since cancelled woe, and moan the expense of many a vanished sight. Then can I grieve at grievances foregone, and heavily from woe to woe tell o'er the sad account of forebemoaned moan, which I new pay as if not paid before. But if the while I think on thee, dear friend, all losses are restored, and sorrows end.
This poem is about remembrance, death, and loss. The narrator of the poem reminisces about the past, and of all the missed opportunities he's had, and the people he's lost. Basically, he's just grieving about the past, he's dwelling in it, and feeling sorry for himself. But the Volta, in the final couplet, tells us that he's okay, because when he thinks about his dear friend, his sorrows end, and he figuratively gets back everything he's lost. To sum it up, the narrator is grieving about things that happened in the past, but memories of his friend snaps him out of his grief. Now, let's analyze each line. When to the sessions of sweet silent thought, I summon up remembrance of things past. These first two lines go together. The narrator is talking about his experience when he is alone, in a quiet place, in his thoughts. His thoughts wander into the past. Shakespeare uses alliteration here, with the three S's, in sessions, sweet, and silent. I sigh the lack of many a thing I sought. In this line, the narrator is thinking about the many things he wanted, but never was able to get. This could be a physical item, or a love for someone. For example, someone he really liked, but was never able to get. This could be the narrator wishing he was more confident, or that he tried harder in order to achieve his goals, hopes, and dreams. And with old woes new wail my dear time's waste. I read that line in iambic pentameter to show the alliteration. Shakespeare uses alliteration here with the W sound in with, woes, wail, and waste. Adding on to the previous line, the narrator is grieving about the amount of time he wasted and not achieving those goals or hopes and dreams that he wrote about. Then can I drown an eye unused to flow, for precious friends hid in death's dateless night. These lines tell us that the narrator is not used to crying, but he does indeed cry for his friends who have passed away. The narrator telling us that this is the only time he cries shows the severeness of reminiscing about the past and old, lost friends. Shakespeare again uses alliteration, but he uses the D sound this time, in deaths and dateless. He also shows vivid imagery to describe crying by using the words drown and flow. And weep afresh love's long since cancelled woe, and moan the expense of many a vanished sight. This expands on the previous point in the quatrain, showing that he is also crying for his lovers that he lost, or any troubles he ever had in love. He also cries or moans about the many things that vanished that he once had. Again, he brings up the past, which shows how the past and previous memories can bring about powerful emotions because of the values attached to them. Then can I grieve at grievances foregone, and heavily from woe to woe tell o'er. In this final quatrain, the narrator continues giving examples of how the past brings up emotions. He grieves, another word similar to the meaning of cry and moan, about all the previous things in the past he has grieved about that were foregone, or not thought about anymore. Then the next line says basically the same thing again. He just uses the word woe instead of grievances. In each of the lines, the word grieve is repeated, and the word woe is repeated, which shows the importance of those words, and the bad connotation and denotation about them is shown off. They both display sadness, which is what the narrator has been trying to show. That remembering the past brings up sadness, in many different forms for different reasons. The sad account of four bemoaned moan, which I knew pay as if not paid before. These final two lines of the quatrain before the final couplet enforce the message of the sonnet one last time, saying that he feels the grief from all his previous grievances, woes, or any other word that expresses the same general emotion. This time, though, he makes it clear that he's feeling these grievances as if he is feeling them for the first time, showing that they are deep and strong grievances. But if the while I think on thee, dear friend, all losses are restored, and sorrows end. This is the final couplet, the Volta, where all is revealed. The poet finds his answer for dealing with all of these past woes. He says that he thinks about his dear friend, and when he does, he finds happiness, or something that is able to cancel out the grief. All of his losses are restored, and his sorrows end. Recalling his dear friend ends his sorrows. This shows how much this dear friend means to him, because just the thought of the friend can make all of the narrator's countless previous pains and griefs go away. There you have it. You learned about Shakespeare. You learned about the sonnet. And on top of that, you learned all about Sonnet 30. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe. See ya!